age them, how to define their various behaviours, and then record factors which may influence these. For example, their location, and I've already mentioned a little bit about our geography and topography here. Food supplies. Interestingly, with our dolphins, being Scottish in origin, they have a liking for salmon, and we have two of the finest salmon rivers in the country, at the Tweed and the Tyne. Also factors like competition with other animals, particularly for food sources or for territory, and indeed the impact of human activity, which again I'll come back to a little bit later. What organisations are involved? Well, I've already mentioned Sea-Watch Foundation. There's another organisation called Marine Life, which focuses more on offshore boat-based surveys. Northeast Cetacean Project, which is run by Dr. Martin Kitching. On Facebook you can find somebody called Dr. Dolphin, which is actually a group of specialists who all contribute to sightings information. There's an organisation called Orca, again, which are boat-based, ferry-based, and offer opportunities to conduct surveys in exchange for a free passage on the ferry. A number of public groups, including our own. There's a Berwick based dolphin watch group, a North Tyneside one, and just last year Yorkshire have set up a cetacean stroke dolphin monitoring group as well. Official organisations, CSIP, Cetacean Stranding Investigation Programme. They are an agency who get involved particularly in autopsy work of cetaceans that may have washed ashore, to understand things like cause of death. The Coast Guard, they are legally obliged to deal with dead cetaceans. They're classed as royal fish. It's an ancient law, but effectively if you find a cetacean, then you're meant to report it to the Coast Guard. I've mentioned the British Divers Marine Life Rescue. We've got wildlife trusts, World Wildlife Foundation, and the Cetacean Research Unit, one of which is based at Aberdeen in Scotland. Of course, academic institutions like your own at the university, with a team I've got to know a little bit with Dr. Berggren and with Dr. Sugden in the last few years. There are also government institutions, inshore fisheries patrols and DEFRA, and then there are commercial interests, particularly with offshore industries developing and the possible impact they may have on marine life. What kind of survey methods do we use? Well, I've broken it down into 4 areas. What we call effort-based or continuous, volunteer-based, or that of professional observers. It can also be shoreline only, shoreline and boat, or boat only. Dedicated shoreline observations can be done on a continuous basis, a random basis, or effort-based. Effort-based, essentially, you choose a location and a time, and you repeat the same observation day over a period of time. Continuous shoreline observations, we started a project last year through the association to do this with volunteer observers, and we now have a first year data set, which actually a second year student, Nicole, is about to do a complete analysis on that for us. And then there are the sort of random reports of the general public, possibly other reports from fishermen who give us an indication of what they've seen. There's also an expanding technological base that we can now use for recording and monitoring cetaceans, and this includes quite sophisticated satellite imagery now, remote surveillance, a device called Dolphin Cam, which I've been developing over the years, and other technologies like drones, hydrophones, submersibles. It's an expanding area at the moment, but the mindset is always that we try not to disturb the animals in any way. They are actually protected in law at several levels, and most recently through the Marine Code of Conduct. So any technology that we do decide to use, has to fulfill those kind of laws. What do we record? Well, typically the species type and, if possible, individual identities. We can now identify our bottlenose dolphins through their dorsal fins. We take high resolution photographs and or video, and from that there's a catalogue that the CRRU have developed and which we have modified now because the dolphins have been breeding, and they're all given individual catalogue numbers and names, so we can identify a lot of the dolphins at least individually. It's a little bit harder with the porpoises and the whales, but as far as the dolphins are concerned, certainly the bottlenose, we've got a really good handle on their identities. And Dr. Kitchen has been working doing something similar with white-beaked dolphins. We estimate the age range. That's based on size, coloration, the location, the date and time, how much time we've spent actually monitoring, because it's not just about recording a sighting, it's about recording when we don't see things as well. Otherwise we end up with a bias in the data. The total numbers, direction of travel, distance from shore or distance from a boat if it's boat based, general aspects of behaviour. Are they feeding? Are they fast swimming? Are they foraging? Are they participating in sexual behaviour? Is there any evidence of injury or ill health? We also record the sea conditions and the weather conditions, just to see if in actual fact that has an impact as well. And this is typical of a paper-based recording system. In this day and age we can use technology to record information electronically, but this kind of form stands us in good stead, particularly when we do surveys with volunteers. Not everybody is savvy with the internet and with submitting forms online electronically, so we'll use this kind of form as well. Basically just records what I've explained to you, and I can send on samples of these forms if you access the Sea-Watch Foundation website. You can see examples there. So what do we do once the data has been collected? Well, we have some sightings specialists who check for the authenticity and verification of the sighting and the quality, particularly with photography and videography. We try and get at least 2 independent sightings to verify what's being recorded. That information is then entered in a central database. In the case of the Sea-Watch Foundation, as I mentioned, you can do that online. And the country is split into several regions, so if you go to Sea-Watch and just click on the sightings database, we are region 7, and you can see what the latest information is on what's being recorded there. And Sea-Watch are now actually producing a monthly or bi-monthly graphic of the various cetacean species that have been identified around that coastline. The database can then be interrogated, and a number of different questions can be answered from the data. And this, as I say, our Dolphin Watch Association set up this continuous monitoring, which started January of last year, We've already produced a few reports on what we've recorded. But just to give you an idea, in 2019 we identified over 2,500 bottlenose dolphins. Of course, a lot of them were repeat sightings, but because we can identify them individually, we could work that out. And that was from around about 270 sightings. So you were virtually guaranteed, if you spent a week here, and particularly during the summer months, that you would get to see our bottlenose dolphins on a fairly regular basis. Sea-Watch Foundation actually has one of the largest sightings databases, and it spans 25 years. So they are able, through both continuous monitoring but also engaging the public in a 2-week snapshot survey, which takes place usually end of July into August, and then each year could be successively compared and be able to see what the trends are in terms of how the animals have distributions changed, the impact of human activity, whether there are changes in their behaviour due to changes in food sources, and so on. And I've mentioned that in 2019 our Dolphin Watch Association has now set up its own sightings database. Our secretary Sophie Kadir is our sightings officer, and she is a fantastic resource for managing that database. So what does it take to become an observer? Well, just about anybody can do it. You only need to have reasonable vision, corrected where necessary. We have a simple test that we do with people when they participate in the surveys. There's a marker buoy which is a mile offshore, and we ask people if they can see that with their normal vision or with their corrected vision, and if that's the case, then they'll be able to spot the dolphins, or indeed other cetaceans. Most of our records show the dolphins will be within that distance, mile offshore, when it comes to shoreline observations. We also want people to be able to judge distances and count numbers, take photographs where possible, and keep accurate records. If you can read a map and compass, that's also helpful, and know how to use binoculars properly. You'd be amazed at how many people find that, or we have found out that they have difficulty with that. If you're able to climb sand dunes, that's also potentially helpful, and resist storm force winds, hailstones, snow, rain, lightning strikes, be able to see through fog and mist, and know when to take a break, as long as it's not a Kit Kat break. We call these panda moments, when perhaps you can spend a number of hours monitoring, you then take a Kit Kat break, and sure enough 150 bottlenose dolphins swim by, and when you've finished your Kit Kat break and turn around to look again, they've been and gone. And we actually have stories like that. So that's just a brief overview on monitoring, and I'll go into more detail now how that can be illustrated through the bottlenose dolphin story that's developed here at Newbiggin in the last decade. When I first got into this research, I was asking some of the locals, particularly fishermen, had they seen dolphins? And this was a quote from a local fisherman in 2010, that I was actually more likely going to see a bikini on Newbiggin Beach than I would a dolphin in the bay. That just reflected on the rarity of bikinis on Newbiggin Beach. And that, you know, dolphins just weren't part of the scene here. But there was one dolphin who became both famous and infamous in the early 1990s. Affectionately known as Freddie, he was adopted by the people of Amble, which is another small coastal town just a few miles to the north of Newbiggin. And for about 5 years he was part of the scene there, a regular visitor to the harbour. He was a young male bottlenose dolphin, sole dolphin, but became famous because of his rareness. That we just didn't have bottlenose dolphins as we have today, ranging up and down the coastline. There were other aspects to his notoriety which I'll just leave for you to go off and research, not for my presentation today. But just pointing out that even in the early 1990s, it was relatively rare to see a bottlenose dolphin off our coastline here at Northumberland. Gradually, though, there were anecdotal reports coming through, particularly offshore from fishermen, from leisure craft users, from ferries, from local shipping, and occasionally from land-based observers in the noughties. And it was actually a personal observation myself in 2007 here at Newbiggin in a place called Little Bay, which is just next to the church. And it was 3